Jill here with Sirius Dallas Moon, and this is another thing that is coming up for the next decade, and this is the questions with Pluto in Aquarius, and Uranus in Gemini, and Chiron in Venus sign as Venus's values. Then, um, first of all, there are going to be a couple of questions. How do we create equity? Is it by taking from, let's just say, taking the advancement from the advanced, or by providing for those who don't have the access to? So I mentioned in briefing the previous episode how around my high school I was living with my mom at my grandmom to go to a certain particular public school where there were more accesses to resources. Now, one of the things that would come up in the question of education, which Gemini deals with a lot, is, do we want to create the equitable by taking the possibilities from those who, let's say, have access to things, or by giving the possibilities to those that don't? I know my answer, because one serves the working, not thinking people. And let me tell you something. Chiron in Aries has not even scratched the tip of the iceberg of working disabilities that we're going to encounter with Taurus, because Taurus rules the balance of work and rest. When is not around orgasmic birth and lineage, or going towards, okay, then we're going to have what people is going to consider the laziness boom. Okay? For example, if people would think about how my father could spend hours and hours looking at engines and the infrastructure of um, the motor of ships and so on, they would think that he was lazy. Okay? That he would be considered a boy with behavioral issues. But that so-called laziness prompted him to be able to rely on income also during his divorce, because he could fix any engine. Now, we're going to have a juxtaposition of the people that are going to be skillified to sometimes frightening degrees in mundane tasks. I saw a video about a person that opened a bicycle shop. And that was a guy that wasn't compatible with the big organizations, but he could spend hours doing this, and that turned out to be the best investment. side by side with that, the uptick of people that are going to be dealing with compounding issues, and with Taurus, it will be around the speech. It would be around sore throats. It would be around, just notice how many hours I'm speaking when I'm broadcasting. If I had to work at a call center for a credit card company, I would be in the bathroom and I would actually be peeing and drinking all the time, taking antihistamines and then creating, a big boom of not cooperating with the subprime crisis that came in the years before. Okay, the preparation was when people were prepared to buy a credit card that where the teller tells them, "Hey, you're going to pay $400," when their expenses are 4,000, and pay subprime plus. Before the subprime went down, I wasn't ready to do that. Now, I dare say I wasn't the best, how should I say that? I wasn't the best call center teller, but that I wasn't willing to do. Now, um, when it comes to education, we're probably going to hear a lot of um, oh, we need the education to be equal. We can't give to those more, and there would probably be a demand to take from what is considered to be the upper class. Whereas we absolutely have the resources and it's more economically reasonable to bring also to what would be considered the lower classes. Yeah, I make revolutions everywhere I go. Um, One of the things that are happening and this is something that served me, by the way, in marketing as well. One of the things that are happening with education system is that people tend to believe that, oh, that person is stupid, that person is this, and they don't they don't have a clue. Nobody is stupid. And and in fact, some of my greatest achievements came from looking into the patterns in what would be considered laziness or fatigue. joined that with looking at the schedule issues, solar, lunar, and then it was like, oh, astrological elections. Then some astrologer asked, well, why don't people want to work at, during the Gen Z Great Resignation? Let's just say he was about to become a father to a child with Saturn in Pisces back then. I, a Pisces ascendant, had an answer. Oh my god. Oh my god. And I was right. So I don't know what, whoever is responsible for the security around the person that asked why don't people want to work during the Great Resignation. I don't know what are the main. I would not feel safe sending personnel down there. Like, can they? Oh my god. But then again, I went and delineated the Roman Catholic Church and called to change Genesis to abolish the Inquisition. And um, problem solving at the edge of total extinction. Um, and the moon ingress to Taurus as we speak, applying to square Pluto. So, Chiron in Taurus is going to go through such journeys where the answer to what people considered laziness would be embodiment. The woman that worked with me in the credit card company before the subprime, where I refused to do the, oh, now you are paying $400, Later, she would work for a fund that was supposed to prevent violence against women using technology. Um, Years later, and when I would ask about financial violence, I entered mute. Chiron in Taurus is probably going to address the embodiment issues around our economy, whether it is the working sector. It's not a particularly revolutionary planet in as much as it is a curation planet. For example, when I went to from the HMO, I went to um, a holistic health practitioner. She knew nothing about me. She saw my tongue. She asked me questions, and then she prescribed a couple of vitamins, did a little bit of acupuncture, and she told me to write, to express myself creatively. I'm a writer. We come from family of the written and word and the spoken word and the picture and the painting. And yeah, the letalities around it, I know. Um, Even in my thesis, when I looked at the body mind question in the medicines, I basically adopted the late Larry Loudon, which was the role of technology, and then I ask, well, what happens when the technology is classified? It stops the scientific evolution, and this is what I addressed at the Me Too, which was the Uranus Aries conjunction in Aries. Um, or with let's say Voco, Dutch East India, I loved how they looted the banks, the Spanish banks, from silver, which aligned the currency, and um, essentially the tribes that were the most resistance to the Inquisition were those that were the closest to orgasmic birthing lineages and where rape is considered incompetence. Um, okay, because along the Inquisition, basically Christianity competed with the local practices. For example, in Iceland, there is a story, so far as I understood from Icelanders, that um, the Christians came and they caught a little bit of corruption. I think it was in trade, and they managed to get people to accept Christianity or segments of Christianity because in that the Christians were a bit better. So when it came to closer to the orgasmic birth and lineages and to the more equitable, whether matriarchal line type of passing of inheritance, or this is where Christians couldn't they couldn't compete. Um, I stopped the previous episode saying that the Lilith row of Pluto and the Lilith is going to go all the way to Gemini. By the time Lilith gets to Gemini, we will have Lilithified most of our scriptures so that by Rao Venus we can go from Lilith to Venus, and it will probably no longer be, if it will be Eve, it will be a different version of Eve, and if it would be Lilith, it will no longer be exiled because it's about the orgasmic birthing, breaking of the water, orgasmic birthing, the head of the baby appears. Um, when the technology is supposed to assist us to transition from the previous wedding at puberty timelines to um, to the fertile timelines. This is absolutely a possibility or a venue towards 2030. Now, when it comes to the certification, it's very important to maintain the good balance between structures and nature and take into account the transition of cars in ecosystemic supersonic boom crossing planes. Those structures are compatible both in facilitating space for orgasmic birthing without people complaining that it's too crowded or too noisy, and also for people that are recovering and have claustrophobia and agoraphobia to reconnect with nature grounding and nervous system balance. The privatization of supersonic boom crossing aircraft can create um, cleaner air improvement because the problem's growing bigger. We're going to experience improvement in the navigation with the birds and everything that flies in the sky. And um, and a lot of the Lilithification that was not actually honoring Lilith because in praxis, Lilith was exiled to basically um, lower chakra, more Luciferian explorations of sexuality that weren't really the liberation of Lilith because they weren't aligned with the heart. And this is where we're going to have a lot of reality checks on, let's say, um, the thoughts about a more decentralized type of intentional communities that can have, let's say, orgies or stuff like that, and the the embodiment curation of Chiron in Taurus can facilitate a more safe, sane, and consensual environment that facilitates the orgasmic birthing timelines. In which way a person would be able to not participate in an orgy, and this is how we basically make sure that it's not a sex cult, but actually something that is contributing to or maintaining the will to live, maintaining the fifth vital sign, removing the shame around sexuality, and allowing a person to participate or not participate according to their own wishes at the given moment, rather than attempting to put everyone in pairs or force group settings, which both are polarizing to a union of the congested sense of self or even the loss of sense of self. And the economy that is curating that, for example, when we had Chiron in Taurus, we had Pluto in Libra, where we legalized that rape within marriage is also rape. It was a path towards, it was an economic move, because otherwise the economy would collapse. And by the way, that is the antidote to transhumanism. It's not about not incorporating technology, but particularly when we think to incorporate technology, the humanity is a very important factor in that technology working with and not against us. Like I said, if I were to ever bring babies, then I would want there to be the ability to call for a C-section or medical intervention, because although I'm tending to curating and transitioning to the orgasmic birthing timelines, I'm also aware that it's a transition and the technology is supposed to facilitate that rather than erase the ability to be to for having will to live, basically, which is also creating neurodegenerative diseases in bloodlines. Um, in general, the economic reasoning of lifting those who are, whether socioeconomically not there yet, rather than shoving away those that are there, is, how should I say, a better reasoning. Now, when we're talking about the denim algae type of stuff, we're definitely going to see the Robin Hood type of perspective. And again, Robin Hood is supposed to take from the excess. Um, and is never supposed to put people in situation where they would be raped, or because then it is not Robin Hood anymore. Then it is already susceptible to invasion. Or that they go through continuous bullying and harassment, um, which is the result of um, either them disagreeing with rape, or in the case that they are in the secret societies, if they did something like trying to create a trauma bond within a person, then they could be susceptible to being basically taking the toll of that other person climbing from that well. It's kind of like they'd rather not be successful in trying to break somebody down, because then they get basically a disabled person vying at them for curation. Okay, this is, like I said, Pluto in Libra was declaring rape within marriage rape for a reason. Um, if we understand those two things, we're basically at a better disposition, because, like I said in the previous video, there are going to be a lot of opportunities to buy a house that is not. Okay, there was somebody that was trying to pressure me to say, oh, there can be opportunities to buy a house in the north, and the north is being bombed. And of course, I also did not have the money to buy there, and I would not take loan, even if I could, to on something that I don't have. I predict the Saturn Uranus with Ketu to be also um, a form of debt relief for people. Again, those that rely on putting people in debt and violating their human rights, they are narrowing their scope. They're, to put it very simply, they're not scheduled to be a part of the more equitable cities. They weren't told that, but they're not. How should I say it? I'm not saying that they won't have residents. I'm just saying it's gonna be like those kibbutz and moshavs where there was ritual abuse, and that was, let's say, not the best place to live, even though it looked like. Um, those societies that were consisting on the value of work I don't recommend, and I cannot stress that enough, because Chiron in Taurus, particularly those that say everybody has to work, everybody has to this, everybody has to, there'll be people waiting for them. And their money is not going to be suffice to curate. Now, here is the thing. I pay a lot of money for holistic health practitioners before I became one. If I see a person who is, let's say, unemployed, to the best of my ability, what I can give them, the tips that they can begin to do pro bono, then I have no problem doing that. But if I see an employed person that's now unemployed because something happened, and that person was with the everybody has to work, everybody has to this, everybody has to that, I'm going to have to think how they're going to pay in equity and dividends in activism for change of policy. Because this is what something along that line would be what would assist them to recover. Chiron Taurus will retrieve people to embodiment, and Taurus is the fifth vital sign. Okay, the fifth vital sign effect that we had with the co-presence of Rahu Uranus in Taurus. Chiron here would be the embodiment as curation. I remember when I went to a holistic health practitioner and she told me to look at the fifth vital sign and use to actually touch, to actually feel the texture, to give it to the plants or to the soil or to paint with it. Um, and that was something that created a sort of connection. Um, then when she was buying a house, she was targeted. She was buying a house as a single woman. But there was another issue where the orgasmic birthing timelines is also a vocal, and Venus is the voice. Now, if people thought that Uranus in Taurus was funny, Chiron here is going to be curation of the fifth vital sign. Like with Chiron Taurus, with Uranus Taurus, it was the Jadek boom, the Tantra boom, and then it was like, okay, well, it's noisy. So what do we do? Do we need to move to another place? With Chiron, it's going to be the people that practice healing their fifth vital sign, trying to conceive a baby. Okay? And Chiron is embodiment, so they would need to be embodied, and then sex chakra, throat chakra. And it's not going to be about, oh, I'm trying to embellish my sensuality, or all the Uranotorian things that some of them were really the aftermath of Me Too, and some of them were something that could be considered a trend. This would be about curating something. Um, the late 60s to 2023, I think, or 20 would have 2023, 2020, yeah, would have um, Sedna in Taurus. So Chiron is going to go over this Sedna. A lot of people are going to turn to something like the Inuit throat singing to curate um, because it's learning how to relax the throat and sing, and it's humming, and it's very good for the vagus nerve. Um, by the way, Shina Nova posted a video of her and her mom. She's a throat singer, and people thought that this was they tried to classify it as 18 and above because it was a cultural. If we go into the Nordic cultures, Icelandic is very breathy. Um, and with the Inuit, they would have the humming. I just think probably not to freeze. It developed, yeah, because it's like activation of the vagus nerve and the humming and the breathy type of languages and technique. As a linguist, I'm just fascinated um, about it, but I don't know more than that. I would need to look into that myself. So I predict that even learning these languages can be curating for throat issues, thyroid issues, fifth vital sign related issues, which is also in endocrine system, and blood circulation conjoined with vagus nerve. Currently, Sedna in Gemini, we might think about how the vagus nerve activation can, across 6 months of work, begin to rejuvenate, working with geranium essential oil, begin to rejuvenate um, the nervous system for people that have fatigue in the nervous system regarding the sensing of their limbs, and even being able to move the limbs is something that I did not have clinical trial with, but as aromatherapist is something that we studied. Um, and this is all going to be squaring Pluto in Aquarius, that actually calls for an industrial boom. So it would be a deindustrialization within an industrial boom. The juxtaposition is going to assist us discerning cult-like solutions from actual embodied solutions. Why am I saying that? Because there's an uptick in intentional communities. Ecosystemic car-free city doesn't sound like a bad idea unless we take into account that in 2030 we have Ketu cities. And Rao in Sagittarius emphasizes aviation. We have the technology with Venus, Jupiter around Sirius and Procyon. We have the technological advancement for an aviation supersonic boom crossing vehicle that is also on land and at sea. and the housing that can accommodate for that. Anything that's not that is not suffice, is not a solution. Why? Because it's going to trigger the nervous system. The carless places are going to be too adjacent to have orgasmic birthing within them. If you can't have orgasmic birthing there, it's not ecosystemic. I'm going to say it again. If you cannot have orgasmic birthing, if a woman couldn't have orgasmic birthing in the area, it's not an ecosystemic structure. The cityfication or the over city tech type of thing is going to be missing the greenery. And then it's going to, and people say, oh, meditation is going to assist people in the city. No, no, no. To meditate, people actually need to be in an environment that supports that. And if they do, they're going to get their grounding met and they're going to begin to experience the uptick in all the things that would call them to get the F out of those places. The tradwife type of sociology is not really supportive of orgasmic birthing because meaning, for some people, legacy outside of the birthing. For example, when I began to do the prepping, I began to tend to the water solutions regarding the North Sea flooding Netherlands, whereas the water availability in the world. Why? Because the father of my children is supposed to be a person that I'm safe being a woman with, safe being intellectual with, safe being emotional with, safe being sensual with, safe being erotic, non-erotic, safe being my inner child with, safe being my adult self with. And having a complete life, both of us, before we bring actual children or even adopt pets for that record, because those children are not there to fill in the needy within us. Um, More things regarding this square with Chiron and Pluto. Healing the soil is going to be a big issue. Also, um, the organic food. People are going to eventually need to eat from what they grow, from what naturally grows. The fixed land is also, think about the herbs that grow all seasons. Those are, or evergreen tree made essential oils can perhaps be a bit of remediation between this Chiron and Pluto. Um, the shortages of some food might be might be curated by the organic, what grows organically. Even when it comes to cattle, there's going to be shortages of, let's say, milk or cheese. And then people will begin either to grow chickens, or they're going to milk the cow themselves, and then Pluto is going to try to make it industrialized, but it's going to be, people are not going to be able to live in those industrialized or workforce type of intentional living communities. Some of them may find themselves having periods of fasting in the process, or um, and the prep for orgasmic birthing is going to facilitate the water buildup. Again, those that are building on big tech um, to do the farming might find that the children will grow all kind of, think about gluten sensitivity and so on and so forth. Um, the people that developed all this lactose sensitivity, gluten sensitivity, a lot of them would later need to be curated by the herbs, the natural soil, and the friction is reasonable. My prediction is that there's going to be enough market for both. And it's in turn going to curate the markets because, um, how should I say that? Let's say, I think it's in this juncture we're gonna have a lot of the people that will say everybody need to work having a baby with lactose intolerance, this intolerance, that intolerance, that. Before I was living even in Ramat Gan, which was the city that maintained the green lungs and so on and so forth. I remember when they tested me for allergy, it's 50 little jabs of different materia, and they found barely anything. I was like, what's to do with the child? Then we moved to Arad. The air was clean, but it wasn't a job. And then I edited my mother's book and so on. So there was something. And before that, I was working at a jobby job. I tried to work at a jobby job. There weren't even chairs. There was a parliament member that forced the super farm to put chairs there. They put chairs like bicycles. Now again, those people that say, well, everybody needs to work in any job, they're going to have some of those weird things that all of their money together compound will not be able to curate, but only a change of lifestyle. I, you know, I saw it on myself. And will there be a big market for those stuff? Yeah, I believe yes, eventually. Um, but it's going to be in such a way where it's kind of like it's going to meet the people that need that final collapse before they turn to the embodied. And for some of them, it's not going to be, for example, if my lineage deteriorated in terms of um, the joy of living with the fifth vital sign and the thyroid, and I tend to curate that, I've already had the work sector crisis. By the way, a lot of people that target individuals they're scheduled to have either their children or their loved ones or themselves or themselves or themselves or themselves needing to be facilitated in the way that the individuals that they were sent to spy on or to target or to harass needed to be facilitated. I can spot the Chiron Taurus already that was in the cash cow businesses. Farmers' Revolution. Okay. Is Chiron return? Now, I'm not 50 yet. Um, but I remember when I was trying to have a jobby job, there was always a revolution because I have my values and so on. And by the way, when they tried to target me on that, when I was tortured and so on, then it was kind of funny because I was able to be with the cucumber or with an actual sausage, but not with a person, because to be with a person needs to be an actually happy, thriving relationship. And if they would cross the like more than that threshold, it already compounded to okay, extermination of entire humanity. And I'm still healing from that. And it's pretty evident that these people are going to have one or another transit where some of them may have already found out that they were also ritually abused as infants. Um, and again, the Chiron Taurus is also the voice. Um, more things that I can think about with the square. There may Here is another thing that I think about. In a places where there was sexual boundary violation that had because Pluto can be occultistic. It can be that certain people, first of all, certain people may have gotten certain things that they didn't have, but also if there was something that was, let's say, conscious occultistic practice by someone, many people thought that let's say that person didn't go through something and they idealized, but they didn't know what they did go through and how it would affect them. So another thing is values. Okay, when Pluto was in Venus sign, they began an accentuation of the anti-slut shaming movement. Chiron Taurus is the embodiment wound. Okay, and this is where, how should I say that? Um, Taurus, depending on the type of Taurus, Taurus is less inclined to reclaim, but more to embody. And as the world is concerned with depopulation, the embodied gnosis that the person that was raped, their and the access that they didn't have to embodiment, or to the level that they had access to embodiment, they could heal. And this is going to be extremely accentuated